Hello, everyone. I've been working for the last few months with a couple breaks on the Quickstart Guide to Game Mastering. And the goal of this project is to help people run their very first game of Dungeons and Dragons as the Dungeon Master. We hit a big milestone this week. Yesterday morning, I sent out the complete version of the guide and the adventure we designed to go with it to our list of alpha readers. So this is a version of the guide where we're really looking for feedback on what works, what doesn't work, so we can put it through some rigorous editing before we release it to the whole world. And so really happy about this milestone. And I wanted to take this opportunity to show you sort of where we're at with this project and maybe highlight a few things about it. And then what you can expect is within a couple weeks from now, as we work through that feedback, we will be able to launch this guide to the world in what we're calling the beta version on the website, which is howtogm.guide. So let's look at the state of things today, and hopefully you'll get an idea of where we're at. So what we're looking at right now is the sort of master draft in Notion. And this top part here is the table of contents. And as you can see, there is a lot of stuff in here. And so it looks very, very long. But the truth is each of these sections, these subsections, are quite short. It's like one paragraph or two. So at the end, the whole guide, it's about enough words. The estimated reading time is just over an hour. And this was done deliberately so that you could really skim the structure of the guide and understand, like kind of refresh yourself on what the guide taught you when you read it just by reading the titles. And you can also quickly jump to things that you want to remember or remind yourself on. So that's why it's structured this way, and that's why this table of contents, it seems like it's some giant epic poem or something. So let's go through the sections really quick, just at a high level. I don't want to get into all the content of the guide, obviously. That'll be for you to see in a couple weeks. So there's just an introduction talking about sort of how to use the guide, a few technical notes on things we've done to help you read it. There's a section here that introduces some of the core concepts of D&D and role-playing games. This section was written to help people who are really new to role-playing games. Mindset is a section I think that is perhaps new to this guide, and it's one I'm really proud of, and I think I hope is going to help you a lot. And what it is it talks about ways of thinking as a first-time game master. Things you can keep in your mind going into your first game to increase your confidence about it. And some of the things are pretty obvious, some of them maybe less so. But the whole idea here is to sort of short circuit some of those doubts that I see people have all the time, that sort of self-talk that prevents you from actually trying to run a game. Like, oh, I'm not entertaining enough. Oh, I don't really know the rules that well. There's these common sort of stoppers, mental blockers that prevent people from trying to be a dungeon master. And I'm hoping that by reading through this mindset section, we can help unblock some of those things. And then we get into sort of more the technical sort of step-by-step part of the guide. Before the game is all about preparing to run the game. And as you can see, it's spread out over like an approximate timeline of like things to do a couple weeks in advance, and then things to do a week in advance, and then right up to like, okay, the night before, you should do some of these things. Of course, everything in the guide, anything in role-playing games, really, there's no exact right way to do it. But we felt that by giving like a really opinionated guide, It would just be really easy for someone to follow and feel confident that they'll be successful in their first game. Of course, you're free to take everything with a grain of salt and drop some of the prep if you want. We have a list of supplies you'll need. I thought this one was really important, and you'll see there's anti-supplies because it's actually kind of confusing what you need for a role-playing game sometimes. I remember when I first started playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I was like, what do I actually have to get? Like, because it's not like a board game where there's just like one box you get, though there is the red box and like starter boxes now. But it's a little ambiguous as to where the game really is, like what physical artifacts. So we clarify that here. The biggest section of the guide talks about sort of tactics to employ during the game, so in play. And it's kind of divided into 3 sections. There's the warm-up, and that's really the activities that happen when all your friends first sit down at the game and you're starting to play. What should you do to sort of get into it and get people started? That's here. Then adventure is like once you're really in the flow of the game and you're going through the adventure. This guide includes an adventure that we have designed from scratch to work with the guide. So this is a key feature of this project. And what we're able to do by creating our own adventure is try to make sure it's specifically tailored for first-time game masters. We're also able to connect ideas from the written guide to the written adventure. So when you're at the table playing the adventure and holding it, there'll be like call outs or like reminders of lessons you learned in the guide. So there's a really deep, tight connection between the 2 things to ensure you really feel supported running your first game. So there's a lot here, but as you'll see when I show you how we're formatting this guide, it's structured to be very scannable and digestible. It doesn't come across so well in Notion. It looks like kind of a flat list, but I'll show you more. And then, of course, at the end of the adventure, you get into wrap up when you're just kind of closing off the story and getting ready, hopefully, to play your next one. There's a few suggestions then on after the game, which is like really just reminding you to take notes about what happened and asking players for feedback so that you can improve your skills as a game master going on into the future. And then that kind of marks the end of the guide that you have to read. Like that, once you're here, you should feel empowered and totally capable of running a game of Dungeons and Dragons. But we are hoping you will find it as enjoyable and fulfilling as we do to be a game master. And so the rest of the guide, this section, Next Steps, is dedicated to getting you started on that path towards becoming a better game master. And what we found with this guide, and the reason I wrote it, is the internet is an amazing place for game masters right now. There are so many incredible resources, YouTube channels, blogs, people on Twitch, podcasts. A lot of information is out there on how to become better at game mastering. But I found that was also a problem, because when you're just trying to run your first game, it's kind of like trying to boil the ocean. You want to run your first game, you're trying to understand what you need to know, and people love this game, so they just come in and start telling you, oh, check out this place, check out that place. No, this is my favorite one, this is it, and there's just all this information coming at you, and it feels like you need to know everything, and it's just not the case. So the point of this guide is to really hone in and focus entirely on the bare essentials you need to confidently run game 1. And then after that, when you're ready to continue your journey as a game master, this Next Steps section gives a few prompts, just a few suggestions of sort of leads you can follow. And it points you to some of those other resources that other awesome people have already made. So you can check that out there. And then the bottom is really just like appendices. There's like a glossary to clarify some jargon you might not know. An FAQ is something we're going to put together over time as people ask us more questions about running their first game. We'll fill out that FAQ. And then the cheat sheet is basically a concise bullet point summary of the most important ideas from the entire guide in one spot. So this is the sheet you can kind of print out for yourself and just keep handy after you've read the guide, and you can bring it around with you. The way we structured this as well is like, for example, if I go into, say, the adventure section of the cheat sheet, it's just these few bullet points here. Like there. So that's it. This is here in the cheat sheet along with everything else. It's also at the end of every section to sort of summarize and remind you of the things you've learned. So if I go to during the game adventure and I kind of go to the end of it, again, you'll see that summary at the end of each section. So the guide's really designed to be a good learning resource. Okay, so that's roughly the sections of the guide, the high-level outline. Lots of content, but again, it's structured in short paragraphs and very skippable and scannable. And now I'll show you a little bit of the visual design, which is getting close to finished. And once we get this into a website with that visual design, that'll really help show you the areas that you should focus more on, the areas that are just kind of helpful reminders. And so here's a prototype of the website design. And you can see this, it looks very different to Notion. And so what you get here is like, on the side, there's like pretty nice navigation system. Every section has clear subsections and links to just jump around to here. And that follows you as you go. You can at any point switch to any of the major sections of the guide with this section picker thing. We'll have some nice visuals in here. This is a placeholder illustration that I don't actually have the rights to use, so it won't be on the final website, but I just want to shout out. It's by, I believe his name is Grim Wilkins, who did the art for Quest RPG, which is an incredible game. So check him out, check out Quest. This is here to inspire me as I build this thing. But yeah, we'll have nice visuals to sort of bring it together and make it feel fun to read as much as possible. Key terms that are in the glossary, such as snack bringers, will be highlighted and easy for you to look up, remind yourself what that means. In this section, we have an example of like a template for an email that we suggest you send. And you can see, like, if it's a website, there's all these really convenient features. Like, you could just copy paste this in one click. There's these call-out sections, call-out cards to help visually highlight information worth remembering or things that stand out in the main flow of the guide. This black section is something I'm working on. It might just be like a kind of a visual break as you go through. Read out loud text is really clearly highlighted in different colors. In the website, there's not many of these, but this section here, like these case studies for encouraging player ideas, they're optional. Like you can be fine to run your first game if you just read the section right above it. But if you feel like going a little deeper and you want to see more examples, this section's good for that. And so you can see that it's kind of hidden by default, but at the click of a button, you can expand that and dig in deeper. So the website's really nice for that. It's really nice this design will be really nice at helping you focus on the right things in the guide, and then including errata and additional information in a way that's easy to digest as you want to learn more. This is just some of the visual style. I think you pretty much get the idea. And then there's more wayfinding at the bottom. It's always easy to figure out the next section. You'll notice we have actual reading time estimates for each section. So this next section after the game will be about 2 minutes. At the bottom here, you can see this toolbar showing the section you're on now is about 13 minutes of reading. And we have this sort of breadcrumb navigation, always showing you where you are in the guide. So lots of just basic but important wayfinding so you don't get lost in this thing. So that's basically the website design. It's getting pretty close and will, I think, really improve the readability of the guide. And then one last thing I'll show you is this is a just Google Docs version, but it's the V1 of the adventure we designed specifically to go with the guide. And so I'll just quickly skim down and show you an example of things like these little green call out things. They'll look different in the final product. In fact, this whole adventure will look different. We'll probably have this adventure laid out in more of a classic D&D adventure style with like nice columns of text and nice call outs and illustrations of like dragons and stuff, right? Really put that together. But for now it's Google Docs, but this is an example of those sections I was talking about where this connects directly to an idea we introduced in the guide, that little wizard call out there. And it's meant to remind you and just refresh your memory in your first game on like, oh yeah, that's a thing I read about as I go through this with my players. Structurally, there's not much more to say about the adventure. It'll be laid out pretty much like most D&D adventures are. I'll just quickly skim through the sections and we'll call it a day. So it's this adventure has the players investigating a mysterious illness in nature and in the populace of a small town called Wild Birch. So the players have to find what's causing this illness, and it eventually leads them to discover an outpost of conniving kobolds. I don't want to give the whole thing away. I want to keep some surprises for when you see it. But essentially it's broken into 4 parts. So part 1 is when they come to this dying town after being asked for help from a prominent druid in the community. They get there. You can see there's an ambush. So we start strong with some combat right at the beginning. The players get a chance to sort of explore the town if they want and interact with a few NPCs who are all laid out here. Their investigation then brings them into the wilderness, and it's a pretty short exploration arc that you just it's not like a sprawling wilderness search. And so that eventually leads them to discover some evidence about who's maybe causing this disease, and that's when they find this outpost and they move through that. That's essentially like a miniature dungeon crawl. And then finally, in part 4, they return to town, hopefully victorious, but, it's an RPG, it's D&D, so anything could happen. They might end up being bad guys by then. Depends on your group, right? So that's where we're at. We have a completed alpha version of this guide being reviewed right now by our very helpful short list of reviewers. In the next couple weeks, we'll be able to take that feedback and turn it into the beta version. And the beta version will basically look like this. It'll be a complete website that you can go check out and try yourself. And of course, we'll continue taking feedback as much as possible to make this the best possible guide for first-time Dungeon Masters. Thanks for your attention, and I really look forward to sending this to you for real. Bye.